All right, good evening.
Oh.
I want to welcome everybody here tonight. We have such a special subject matter to talk about. You know, typically we talk about an artist, or we talk about a certain era of art. And tonight we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to talk about a subject matter where there's no specific artist, and we don't really have a recorded history of the art itself.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Butler, why cave art?
Okay, so I was very excited about this, and when I first pitched it and said, this is going to sound really weird, but I want to talk about Stone Age cave paintings. And that sounds really boring maybe to everybody at first, but they are fascinating. They capture my creativity, my imagination. It's usually the first lecture, so I teach art history at Tech, and it's usually our first lecture of like art history content. And so it's the first time that you're showing students these images. And what fascinates me is this moment in human history. I have a timeline, and I promised that I wouldn't test you over this, okay? You don't have to make flashcards to memorize dates, but it's basically most of these cave paintings, the earliest ones that we know of date to around 40,000 BCE. So we're talking 42,000 years ago. And then some of the most recent ones, in quotes, right around 15,000 BCE. So this whole sort of era, the latter half of the Paleolithic period, which means Old Stone Age, Paleo and Lithos. And we have this moment where all over the map, all over the European world, the Mediterranean world, around this time, we start to see these images painted in caves. And it seems like lots of different groups of people in lots of different places are kind of starting this tradition independently of one another, but like kind of around the same time. And there's just like a fascinating impulse to produce an image at that point.
Talk a little bit about what are the commonly accepted theories about what was going on in the world around the time when this art would have been created?
So we are Homo sapiens, right? We are our current modern human. We are harnessing fire, but we are still pre-agriculture. We're certainly pre-writing. So we don't have standardized written language yet, and we're not doing agriculture, which means we're not staying put and like building up cities and civilizations and that sort of thing. We're hunter-gatherer, nomad, walking around, and we won't get to agriculture or writing until sometime after this time period.
All right, so we're going to focus on a couple of really good examples of cave art tonight. What are those examples?
Okay, I'm very excited. So the first, this is bad. You're going to have to really, like 30 minutes. The two examples that I brought for us tonight, the first one is called Lascaux, and this one dates to this about 15,000 period. But I have it first here because it's found first, so it's rediscovered right around 1940. And when they find it, it's like they open it up and just let everybody traipse through it. And like peoply breath and hands and air like that is not so good for the state of preservation of these things. So they fall into a state of disrepair pretty quickly. But the other example that I have brought for us to look at is a cave called Chauvet. And Chauvet is like twice as old, right? We're like 30,000 BCE, but not discovered until the mid-1990s. And so they had learned their lesson from the conservation of Lascaux. And as soon as they found this, they lock it down, basically. And I didn't really start to see good images or videos of Chauvet. There's a documentary that I've already nerdily pitched to like everybody I've individually spoken to so far. It's called Cave of Forgotten Dreams by documentary filmmaker Werner Herzog. And it's about Chauvet, and it's the best images and footage of Chauvet available. It's so good. He's mystical and weird, and it's boring and wonderful. And so if you like these things, I recommend watching that. So these are the two.
So what part of Europe are we talking about?
Okay, we are in central and southern France for Lascaux and Chauvet respectively. They are really kind of all over, but there is especially a concentration of these painted cave systems in southern France and northern Spain.
What terrain?
We are along the Pyrenees Mountains there for we geography folks. Geography.
All right, so talk a little bit about the paintings themselves? What are they? What are the subject matter?
Yeah. So one that I like to start with are these hand stencils. And these are found in a lot of the cave systems, not just these two. And some of the very earliest painted caves that we have are just hands. And it's one of the only indications of the human form in the caves. There's like one example of a human-ish figure in any of these. The vast majority of these paintings are animals, and mostly limited to like large quadruped mammals. So we don't have, there's not fish, there's not birds, there's not small animals like rabbits and squirrels. We're talking bulls, bison, horses. At Chauvet, we also have rhinoceri and lions and bears. Oh my, lots of animals.
So what are your thoughts on what do the hands symbolize, or what could they have meant?
So that's the question for a lot of these things, right? Is the why, like what drives the production of these images? And there are several theories, several ideas. What's cool about this time period, maybe frustrating for some people, but what I find fascinating is that means we get to keep it open-ended. And every time I teach this, someone says, what if it means this? And I'm like, that's a good idea. You should go write a dissertation about it. Like that's still a possible interpretation, right? For the hands, one of the most commonly suggested ideas is that they could be an indication of whoever made these paintings. Right? We have a very modern idea of artists signing their work. So it could be sort of that sort of record. It might be more like I was here, we were here, right? This is everybody in our little group that's traveling through together. We generally understand these spaces as being ceremonial. They are not residences. People didn't live in these cave systems. And so one of the other ideas is that perhaps these are the people who participated in some sort of ceremony or ritual in the space, kind of leaving their, almost like a signature, right? Leaving your mark on like a legal document.
Yeah, that's right.
He's a lawyer.
So what are they painting with?
So most of the images, and this is, I like a puffy vest guy for scale, right? So we're painted up on the ceiling, and look how big they are, right? These animals are huge, and they're way up there. We're not talking about making an image out of convenience, right? They're way inside the caves. It's totally pitch black. We're working with a little lamp. There's no oxygen, right? We're greatly disadvantaged by doing this, which I think drives home the priority, right? That this was urgent and important that they go do this is kind of a fascinating thing to me. So the black that we see across these images is charcoal, right? You take and you char wood in a fire and it becomes a drawing material. If you've ever drawn with charcoal, it's crumbly, it's dark black, you can smudge it and get some shading. So that's what the black here is, which means that we can definitively date those carbon components, right? They can do radiocarbon dating and literally like peel back the layers of these caves to see what they're made out of. If we find an area with red, so we've got some places where we have sort of a rusty red-orange, that's more like an ochre, some sort of mineral or stone that you can take and grind up and combine with a liquid binding agent to make paint. And in the case of these prehistoric cave paintings, that liquid binding agent is none other than spit. Just a little bit of saliva. Okay. And these are like a good, like a spray painted stencil for street art, right? Where get that mixture in your mouth, it's probably really delightful, some sort of reed or straw-like implement, and we're like around our hands and leaving a stencil of our hands there. So airbrush, yeah.
This year's plein air event, we'll have a category art spit on canvas.
Spit art. It's genius, right?
Was there evidence of tools or implements that were used?
So basically we're dealing with what would be sort of a rudimentary type of paintbrush, right? Stick with plant or hair matter on the end. It's sort of like a brush, or fingers or stick, or this blow method. So these look more drawn, but there are other places where the animals are sort of articulated in these just little like blown dots.
So typically, an artist takes a canvas, it's
Yeah.
sitting on an easel, they paint on a
Yeah.
flat two-dimensional surface.
Yes.
Why are these different? These certainly are not two-dimensional
No,
surfaces.
they're not. And see, I often tell my students, I would be the lazy cave painter. I'd be finding the like flattest, most convenient spot to work upon, right? And they are doing the literal opposite of that. For one thing, it's a bit recalls like the Sistine Chapel ceiling, right? Where we're working sort of through a tunnel and then up onto a ceiling. But some of my favorite images of this effect are actually from Chauvet, this other cave system, where they take advantage of the curvature of the cave's surface and sort of harness that to produce something like depth or perspective. So here where we have this rhino, we give the bulk of the rhino's shoulder and horn onto this like protuberance of the cave wall. And then where the cave recesses, we have these little hips that go back, right? And the cumulative effect is that it's sort of surging out from the wall. Think also about shadow play and the flicker of flame light and those types of things sort of helping this look like it's moving or coming to life a little bit.
Talk a little bit about the array of characters that are depicted on the walls.
Well, this is one of my favorites. And I often I told you earlier that one of my favorite things about teaching is I can give my opinion to students like it's a testable fact, right? And one of those things is that there's a clear top 3 rhinoceri in the history of art in my book. And 2 of the top 3 are here at Chauvet, actually, and this is one of them. So we do have a number of rhinos here. This one with multi-horns is the other one. That's a top greatest hit rhino right there. And it's like doing this implied motion thing, right? Again, flicker of flame light. And I'm like moving, it looks like it's moving its head up and back, right? Sort of ramming through space. They obviously know rhinos don't have 10 horns or whatever. There are lions at Chauvet, sort of multiple panels of lions, again, with this sort of layering. And in this case, we've sort of shaded the charcoal and even carved back into the wall's surface, kind of like taking an eraser to a pencil drawing to give a highlight to create that sort of contrast or border. Let's see, bulls and bison probably represent the largest percentage, and then there's a number of horses. And this sort of stack of horses at Chauvet has been definitively decided is the oldest portion of the drawings there. They can date all of the ones around it, and they know that those are the oldest ones, those horses.
In the style of the paintings, so some of them are more realistic form, others are...
I think at Chauvet, the word I always use, like art historically, is naturalistic, right? That it looks as if it was actually drawn from nature. It looks like the real natural world. And many of the images at Chauvet have that, I think, in spades, far more than we tend to think of like prehistoric peoples having the capacity to do, right? If we think, I often tell my students, we are not like ooga booga cave people stick figures, right? Like they're sophisticated drawings. Also, we're doing them from memory, right? Observation and memory. I can't take a photograph into the cave. I can't look at my reference photo on my phone while I'm drawing it. This is an animal I saw from some distance away and then went and produced into the cave.
Describe a little bit like Lascaux.
Yeah.
How deep into the earth are we talking about?
Isn't that fascinating? So we are not drawing at the opening of a cave. This kind of makes it look like it's sort of an open space. But here, I think by the time we get to the Hall of Bulls, we're like probably at least 100 or more meters into the earth. We're not right at the opening of these cave systems. And so thinking about, again, just the urgency to do it, that we're really going to very great lengths to get way down in there. So most of these do take place way down deep inside of a cave system. And being in this part of the world, we know about a cave system, right? So we're not talking about this first opening that you can see, but you kind of get down and crawl around and go way back in there.
There wouldn't have been any natural light.
No, zero, none. So we're using a little flicker of flame in like a animal fat lamp kind of situation. We are not enjoying an abundance of oxygen when we're that far into the earth. So a lack of oxygen, but a lot of CO2. So the tree roots and stuff are cranking CO2 out into this cave. And lack of oxygen probably produces a sort of a psychological state, not unlike hallucinogenic drugs or something, seeing spots, feeling lightheaded, a little bit dizzy. There's a chance they're intentionally ingesting some other sort of mind-altering substances, as sometimes has been known to happen in human history. But at the very least, just nature itself is sort of imposing that kind of otherworldly environment sort of on them.
Typical art throughout
Yes.
our modern history.
Yes.
Human beings take
Yes, that's correct.
stage,
Yes, yes.
but not here.
No, fascinating. Let me show this. Feast your eyes upon the one known image of a human in any of these painted cave systems. And he looks like dumb. He's a dumb little stick figure guy, right? Compared to the sophistication of the animal imagery, right? He's a little stick guy with a little bird head. Right?
He doesn't appear to be faring very well.
No, he doesn't seem to be doing well. The animal is winning out for sure, right? And it's unclear, again, theories, lots of theories, not lots of answers. Is this a person wearing a headdress or a helmet or a mask? Is this some sort of godlike spiritual figure? Think like in ancient Egypt when we have people with animal heads as gods. Priest or shaman, some sort of transformation, supernatural world, don't know, right? But he has a bird head and just a stick body that is in stark contrast to the detail that's used to spell out the animals, right? He's often read as like a cautionary tale of hunt gone wrong, where the bird on a stick is usually interpreted as an atlatl, which is a type of like spear throwing implement. And then we have these other sticks sort of lying around that might indicate arrows or spears or something. And the bull, who looks very angry, appears to have what are maybe his entrails or intestines hanging out there underneath him. And so is it a literal like Joe went hunting, didn't get the kill shot, this guy ran him over, right? It's like a cautionary tale to aim good or whatever. Or is this some sort of myth or story otherwise, or involved in a mythology or a spirituality that we don't know anything about? All of those sort of interpretations are up for grabs, basically.
In Chauvet, with all of those images,
Yeah.
not a single human.
Nope. No. There's one, is it a stalagmite or a stalactite when it comes down from the ceiling? That was unanimous. Poll the audience. Okay. Oh, that's good. I like that. Okay, that's really good. Hold on tight, stalactite. There's one that comes down that has something that almost looks like legs on it. But every image I have ever seen of it, it doesn't really look like a people. Like it does sort of have the appearance of two legs, but then it kind of has like two animals off the top. So I don't count it. Definitive. Period. Definitive. Yeah.
What are some of the theories out there about why these caves exist? Why are these images on the ceilings of these caves?
So again, we're in a space that is not lived in. There's no evidence that they're ever used as residences. The types of things that we do find in the caves are things like instruments, like bone flutes, right? We hollow out a piece of bone and make an instrument out of it. That combined with their location, combined with the potential mind-altered state you might find yourself in there, leads most people to think, at least generally, ritual or ceremony, sort of, right?
Is there evidence that they were living in these caves at all?
No. There are no people living in them. That's determined by things like waste. Our trash tells future people a lot about us, right? And there's no indication that anybody ever lived in any of these painted cave systems. Fascinating.
I'm not sure about Chauvet, but Lascaux was a hole in the ground.
Pretty much, yeah.
It's not
quite
like
literally.
a huge, Mammoth Cave situation.
Right. No, there's not like a great big opening where it's like, here, I'm coming in now, and here I'm going to live here. There are moments of animal activity. So in several of these instances, we have an image painted or drawn, and then scratch marks, animal activity in the cave. And so they can do sort of some relative dating. Is the scratch mark under the drawing or on top of the drawing, to tell when the animals are there, and try to suss out, are humans or animals the ones occupying the cave at any moment? Because the other thing that I haven't even mentioned yet is we have a date range here of at least 2,000 years. In each of these cave systems, the indication is that people are using them over a period of thousands of years. So we're talking about many, many, many generations of people coming back into the space over and over and adding their own images, which is like, I like to think of that in modern terms. Like, I'm going to walk up to something from ancient Rome, which is about as long ago as this would be to those people, and I'm going to draw my own picture on top of it. Right? I'm gonna be like, me too, dude, right? I'm gonna add a picture here. But that's literally what they're doing. Like, they're coming into a space and finding it filled with images. They may not know what those people 100 years ago meant by these drawings, but they're adding their own images and using the space themselves. And we're not really sure whether they were all on the same page. So to the question of what do they mean or what were they used for, sometimes the answer is like, could have been all of those things, any one of those things, to different groups of people who came through the space, because it's not clear that they were all of one unified idea about them.
They seem to have stood the test of time.
Yeah.
I mean, 2,000 years is a long time to continue back to a hole in the ground.
Yes. And add your own layers.
Yes.
Yes. And your own hands and your different animals. And
so these spaces could have been very important to whatever culture was surrounding.
Yeah. That's what I think is clear, is it's not a matter of boredom or, you know, anything sort of trivial. Whatever they were made for was extraordinarily important to the people who did them, right? And I know that's not like a good, clear, solid answer, but it was very clearly an urgent priority of theirs to do these things.
So can we go see these caves now?
No, not the real ones. But after they opened Lascaux and it got trashed by humans, they learned their lesson with Chauvet. And the second they found it in the 90s, they just like immediately closed it back down. And now then there are replicas for each of them that you can go visit. And you can see where what they do is they go in and they use a laser to like scan the entire thing. And they have rebuilt like the entirety of Lascaux. You can go visit it now. It's very near the original site. And so while they're not the original paintings on the original cave walls, they've recreated it such that it is, right? Rather than just sort of making panels in a museum kind of interior, you walk through and you're in a cave.
You're in a cave.
Yeah, you are in a cave, and they have recreated these things allegedly within a millimeter of their lives, right?
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so there are some documentaries out there about these.
Yes.
Where can we find more information?
Where is one of them straight? So Cave of Forgotten Dreams is my go-to. That's the best possible one. It's not on Netflix now because I looked, but it's got to be out there somewhere. And that just came out in, I want to say like 2011 maybe. And that was the first time I had seen good images and video of Chauvet. And I was on the edge of my seat. We went and saw it in a theater. We found an indie theater that was showing it. And everybody else was like yawning a lot and going for lots of snacks and bathroom breaks. And I was like on the edge. I was like, they're so good. I was like really sort of freaking out about it. But that one's very, very good. That is my absolute go-to for looking at more information about these. And they do a good job of showing how interdisciplinary the study is. To be an art historian looking at just these images only can take you so far, right? So they talk to animal people who study Paleolithic animal species and things. And they talk about the species of animals, the evidence of animal activity. They talk to a guy who's like dressed in reindeer pelt playing a bone flute, like he's demonstrating how the bone flute would have worked. It's fascinating stuff. They talk to another guy who throws an atlatl and demonstrates how that works. All kinds of scientists and stuff. So they do a good job of really sort of fleshing out what it all means.
Great, thank you. Well, as we wrap up tonight, what are your final thoughts on cave art, its relevance in the art world?
That's a good question. I think it could be really easy to say, literally, who cares and why does it matter? But they are our first images, as far as we know, right? The first images made by humans, period. Right. So just the idea to document something with a picture of it was a novel idea at 40,000 BCE when somebody did it for the first time. And what it does to me is it humanizes prehistoric peoples. Like, this is culture, right? It's sort of art with a capital A. They're good, right? They're sophisticated. They're not simpleton, primitive doodlins, right? And this is one of my all-time favorite ones. It's just about the most simple of all of the depictions of the animals, a cave bear, and it's with this sort of red ochre kind of pigment, not charcoal. There's almost no shading or modeling to give it 3 dimensions. It's a contour line. But the line weight, like when it goes up over the hump of the bear's back there and the line gets thicker, right? Because it's spelling out this mass. Perfection, right? And even I often will like take a moment to draw my own bear on the whiteboard at this point when I'm talking about these, and suckers straight across the back, right? But if you think about when a bear walks, how like pokey and articulated those shoulder blades get, this really captures that. And it's like, I saw this bear from 100 yards away the other day. And then I went into the cave and produced like the world's most sensitive, sophisticated rendering of said bear, just a little bit of shading around his snoot, cutest ears in the whole wide world, cutest little Winnie the Pooh ears, right? And you can kind of make out here this line that tells us its belly is right under this sort of shelf of rock again, right? So we're still sort of using that rock surface. So to me, just the sophistication and the goodness of them really stands out.
The way they've used the curve of the cave wall, they could see the bear in the stone.
Yeah, right. You sort of walk up and you're like, that's a bear's belly right there, and then that's your starting point. Now you're going to make it.
Fascinating.
It's good, right?
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
What
Thank
great
y'all for talking
information.
caves with me.